of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Independence Day. How is it going? What is everyone's plans? Are you at the lake? Are you cooking out? Did you buy a shit ton of stuff to blow up? Tell me all about it. Good morning, Peach State Mama. Good morning, Gigi for Life. I got your email. I'm going to respond to it. I saw Mermaid. I saw Wiz, Nana Banana. Angie Gibson, good morning. Yes, happy 4th. Sunset gazing. I responded to your email. Chloe's in the house. Angel's in the house. Hello, Shonda. Good morning, Diva. What is everyone doing? Mermaid said lake and barbecue. Lake and barbecue. Well, my husband has to work, and it's hot as hell. My kids want to go and watch fireworks tonight, but you know, when you go to bed at 6 o'clock in the evening, it's kind of hard to catch a fireworks show at 9:30. So I think I'm going to have to skip that. Good morning, Glenn. Good morning, Tiffany. I hope everyone is safe, happy, and watches the amateur drunks on the road. You know, we're pros around here. Mermaid, you are so right. You read my mind. It's almost time for the Christmas trees. Almost time. I'm actually going to do a show this month, Christmas in July, because you guys know how I go crazy about Christmas. That's my jam. Ilyanka said, is there a bot in the chat named O Disappeared? I don't think so. We don't have any bots that I know of, and if we do, they get removed really fast. So get to blowing stuff up. Don't forget about the hot dog eating contest today. That's going to be a big one. I believe it's on Coney Island every year. Let's look at that real quick.
On the annual Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. The turbocharged chow down happens tomorrow. Today, the contestants stepped on the scales for the pre-contest weigh-in at Hudson Yards. Mickey Sudo, an 8-time champion, has eaten a personal best 48 and a half hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes. That guy, Joey Chestnut, has won the contest 15 times, the most in history. He currently holds the world record of 76 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes.
I'm going to be sweating. It's not going to be pretty, but I'm going to do whatever it takes to get those dogs down, and I'll be making a run for the record.
Not sure it's ever pretty, but the Nathan's famous 4th of July International Hot Dog Eating Championship takes place tomorrow at the iconic Nathan's famous flagship restaurant in Coney Island from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. So there's your sodium intake for the year.
You almost wish that they would give them extra credit, because eating all of that in this humidity just seems so much harder.
Listen, if we got the showers and thunderstorms to begin early enough tomorrow, we could pre-wet the buns.
Oh, that's even worse.
So Liz doesn't even want to have dinner tonight.
Could you imagine eating 48 hot dogs? I don't think I eat 48 in a year, let alone one setting. Jamie Luna says Nathan's is a good hot dog. That's OJ's favorite. He won't eat like the Bar S, the real cheap hot dogs. He's got to have the real beef. OJ will not eat the other. This was shared with me. This is going to be just a laid back show. This is just celebrate the 4th. Love our country, love our military, our founding fathers, our fellow countrymen and women. JPL went to a Beach Boys concert last night, and John Stamos was on the stage. Look at this. imagine going to a Beach Boys concert and John Stamos gets on the stage? That JPL has the life. Has the life. Let's get to celebrating the 4th, shall we? You know, I'm a true patriot, true American. I know today's not Veterans Day, but I always have to give a shout out to my sons who serve in the military. Well, I say I do. I left one of them out. This is my son that's in the Air Force. This is an older picture. This was probably from 8 years ago, but I had it handy. This is my middle son. This is from about 5 years ago. This is my youngest son. This was from about 6, 7 years ago. So I appreciate all the work that they do keeping us safe.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial, from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for
And this is something that we talk about on the show very often. Trial by jury, a jury of your peers. You don't just have one person point and say you did it, or hold you in jail for years upon years upon years until you get to see a judge. This is so important. This is so important. This is our declaration that we are an independent nation.
Transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved.
And as we know, it was totally dissolved. Indica, you are so right. None of this needs to be rewritten. It needs to be reread. Every child and adult should listen to this often. We need to get back to the Pledge of Allegiance at school every day. Children, like I had to do, have to memorize the Declaration of Independence, know the Bill of Rights, and have some basic understanding of how our government works instead of just sitting on their fat asses and bitching.
And that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
And these are the names that signed it. Of course, you know, John Hancock, he had to put the biggest signature on there. To this day, people say, put your John Hancock on there because he had to have the biggest signature. Amazing. And their foresight, our founding fathers, was God-given. And for them all to come together. I found out something interesting when I was studying for this show. Just Kat said something very important. She said, we don't get taught U.S. history in school. We learn it from Lin-Manuel Miranda musicals. Ain't that the shits? I know. Something very interesting when I was preparing for the show, I found out that there was one state in particular, the state of Delaware, which is our first state, that did not want to be independent. Then they got worried that the people in New Hampshire and New York were going to whip their ass. So they got in line really quick. I didn't know that.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight over the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave? And the rockets red flags bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave.
And the home of the brave, because we have to admit that even though it was a different time in 1776, our founding fathers had a lot of foresight and they were beyond brave. Beyond. Indica said, we had to study and pass the United States Constitution in 8th grade before we could enter high school. I loved it. Me too, and I talk about it on the show quite a bit. I'm like, come on, let's remember 8th grade civics. I had someone in here arguing one day saying that the federal government can't tell the states what to do. And I'm like, now come on. Let's get real here. Let's get real here. They don't have an absolute right, but I'll get into that another day. We love you, Pat. Pat said, yes, we love our neighbors. We love our neighbors too. Some that are south of us, we're not too fond of sometimes, but we love our northern neighbors. Let's get to the Bill of Rights.
Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Amendment 3. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house, without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Amendment 4. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces, or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Amendment 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which.
And this is so important in our country. And I know some people don't agree with it, but you get an impartial jury, you get a speedy trial. They don't just put you in there and throw away the key just because someone thinks you did something. And I know some cases have gone really, really wrong, but they have to have the evidence. They have to have the evidence. It has to be public. We, the public, need to know why somebody who's in our society was taken and put in jail. And I saw a couple of comments about, how schools don't teach history. There is a certain sect of our society that want our history to go away. And I'm not down with that. You don't learn anything by forgetting. It's ridiculous. The only way you learn is if you make a mistake.
District shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Amendment 7. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Amendment 9. The enumeration in the Constitution.
Now, the cruel and unusual punishment is where people come out of the woodwork about the death penalty. Not every state uses it. Some do, and they use it handily. Hey, Eddie, where you been? You old stranger? Hello, Pam. Do you think that the death penalty is cruel and unusual punishment? Just a conversation. You know my thoughts on it.
Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Amendment 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Amendment 10. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people.
Chilling. To me, it's absolutely chilling. That is our Bill of Rights. This needs to be taught and taught and taught. I do not like the way some of these schools are running. Not all of them, because some are doing still a great job. There is no reason that a kid needs to be on their damn phone all the time or screwing around on TikTok. They need to use their brain and memorize these things. If they forget it at the age of 21, whatever. But this is crazy. I heard about a school, I can't remember what state it was in, and each child was required to bring a cell phone, and they were using apps for learning. No, dipshit. Give them a book. Give them a book. You out of your mind? Dynamite is in here. I shared some of Dynamite's clips yesterday. Hello, RJ. RJ's in here. JV is a teacher. Thank you for what you do. She says, I don't let mine be on their phone for several reasons. Yeah. When I heard about that, I'm like, apps for learning? Get a book. Some of these kids don't even know what a damn chalkboard is. Gotta be kidding me. It's crazy. Now, of course, today we also celebrate our military. We celebrate our history, our military, and basically, each other. What we've all, gone through as a country. Jules says, learn cursive. I still write in cursive. It looks like hieroglyphics, but I do. This speech will give you chills.
Suggestions that may help you on your way to a better world. And while these lessons were learned during my time in the military, I can assure you that it matters not whether you ever served a day in uniform. It matters not your gender, your ethnic or religious background, your orientation, or your social status. Our struggles in this world are similar, and the lessons to overcome those struggles and to move forward, changing ourselves and changing the world around us, will apply equally to all. So here are the 10 lessons I learned from basic SEAL training that hopefully will be of value to you as you move forward in life. Every morning in SEAL training, my instructors, who at the time were all Vietnam veterans, would show up in my barracks room, and the first thing they'd do was inspect my bed. If you did it right, the corners would be square, the covers would be pulled tight, the pillow centered just under the headboard, and the extra blanket folded neatly at the foot of the rack. It was a simple task, mundane at best, but every morning we were required to make our bed to perfection. It seemed a little ridiculous at the time, particularly in light of the fact that we were aspiring to be real warriors, tough, battle-hardened SEALs. But the wisdom of this simple act has been proven to me many times over.
Let me tell you a story. When my oldest son came home from basic training from the Air Force, he walked different. He talked different. The way he kept his room was different. He was tucking in his corners. He had his shoes lined up. I'm like, what happened to you? His hair was short. He didn't have that hippie look anymore. It's all about discipline. Now, I believe that you should make the bed every day. It sets the tone for the day. OJ messes up the bed, though. OJ can actually take his claws, pull down the covers, and get under it and go to sleep. Every day he does it. I'm going to put OJ in the Marines.
If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. So if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. During SEAL training, the students are all broken down into boat crews. Each crew is 7 students, 3 on each side of a small rubber boat, and 1 coxswain to help guide the dinghy. Every day, your boat crew forms up on the beach and is instructed to get through the surf zone and paddle several miles down the coast. In the winter, the surf off San Diego can get to be 8 to 10 feet high, and it is exceedingly difficult to paddle through the plunging surf unless everyone digs in. Every paddle must be synchronized to the stroke count of the coxswain. Everyone must exert equal effort, or the boat will turn against the wave and be unceremoniously dumped back on the beach. For the boat to make it to its destination, everyone must paddle. You can't change the world alone. You will need some help. And to truly get from your starting point to your destination takes friends, colleagues, the goodwill of strangers, and a strong coxswain to guide you. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we called them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They out-paddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys from every corner of the nation and the world always had the last laugh, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers. Several times a week, the instructors would line up the class and do a uniform inspection. It was exceptionally thorough. Your hat had to be perfectly starched, your uniform immaculately pressed, your belt buckle shiny and void of any smudges. But it seemed that no matter how much effort you put into starching your hat or pressing your uniform or polishing your belt buckle, it just wasn't good enough. The instructors would find something wrong. For failing the uniform inspection, the student had to run, fully clothed, into the surf zone, then wet from head to toe, roll around on the beach until every part of your body was covered with sand. The effect was known as sugar cookie. You stayed in the uniform the rest of the day, cold, wet, and sandy. There were many a student who just couldn't accept the fact that all their efforts were in vain, that no matter how hard they tried to get the uniform right, it went unappreciated. Those students didn't make it through training. Those students didn't understand the purpose of the drill. You were never going to succeed. You were never going to have a perfect uniform. The instructors weren't going to allow it. Sometimes, no matter how well you prepare or how well you perform, you still end up as a sugar cookie. It's just the way life is sometimes. If you want to change the world, get over being a sugar cookie and keep moving forward. Every day during training, you were challenged with multiple physical events, long runs, long swims, obstacle courses, hours of calisthenics, something designed to test your mettle. Every event had standards, times you had to meet. If you failed to meet those times, those standards, your name was posted on a list. And at the end of the day, those on the list were invited to a circus. A circus was 2 hours of additional calisthenics, designed to wear you down, to break your spirit, to force you to quit. No one wanted a circus. A circus meant that for that day, you didn't measure up. A circus meant more fatigue, and more fatigue meant that the following day would be more difficult and more circuses were likely. But at some time during SEAL training, everyone made the circus list. But an interesting thing happened to those who were constantly on the list. Over time, those students who did 2 hours of extra calisthenics got stronger and stronger. The pain of the circuses built inner strength and physical resiliency. Life is filled with circuses. You will fail. You will likely fail often. It will be painful. It will be discouraging. At times, it will test you to your very core. But if you want to change the world, don't be afraid of the circuses. At least twice a week, the trainees were required to run the obstacle course. The obstacle course contained 25 obstacles, including a 10-foot wall, a 30-foot cargo net, a barbed wire crawl, to name a few. But the most challenging obstacle was the slide for life. It had a 3-level, 30-foot tower at one end and a 1-level tower at the other. In between was a 200-foot-long rope. You had to climb the 3-tiered tower, and once at the top, you grabbed the rope, swung underneath the rope, and pulled yourself hand over hand until you got to the other end. The record for the obstacle course had stood for years when my class began in 1977. The record seemed unbeatable until one day a student decided to go down the slide for life head first. Instead of swinging his body underneath the rope and inching his way down, he bravely mounted the top of the rope and thrust himself forward. It was a dangerous move, seemingly foolish and fraught with risk. Failure could mean injury and being dropped from the course. Without hesitation, the student slid down the rope perilously fast. Instead of several minutes, it only took him half that time. And by the end of the course, he had broken the record. If you want to change the world, sometimes you have to slide down the obstacles head first. During the land warfare phase of training, the students are flown out to San Clemente Island, which lies off the coast of San Diego. The waters off San Clemente are a breeding ground for the great white sharks. To pass SEAL training, there are a series of long swims that must be completed. One is the night swim. Before the swim, the instructors joyfully brief the students on all the species of sharks that inhabit the waters off San Clemente. They assure you, however, that no student has ever been eaten by a shark, at least not that they can remember. But you are also taught that if a shark begins to circle your position, stand your ground. Do not swim away. Do not act afraid. And if the shark, hungry for a midnight snack, darts towards you, then summons up all your strength and punch him in the snout, and he will turn and swim away. There are a lot of sharks in the world. If you hope to complete the swim, you will have to deal with them.
Okay, right there is where I would have to draw the line. God bless our military. God bless our military. But if one of those things swam up on me, I would just get eaten. I wouldn't just go and punch one in the snout and keep swimming. And that line pole thing they had, OJ can actually do that. He has very good balance. I really need to get him into the military.
So if you want to change the world, don't back down from the sharks. As Navy SEALs, one of our jobs is to conduct underwater attacks against enemy shipping. We practice this technique extensively during training. The ship attack mission is where a pair of SEAL divers is dropped off outside an enemy harbor and then swims well over 2 miles underwater, using nothing but a depth gauge and a compass to get to the target. During the entire swim, even well below the surface, there is some light that comes through. It is comforting to know that there is open water above you. But as you approach the ship, which is tied to a pier, the light begins to fade. The steel structure of the ship blocks the moonlight. It blocks the surrounding street lamps. It blocks all ambient light. To be successful in your mission, you have to swim under the ship and find the keel, the center line, and the deepest part of the ship. This is your objective. But the keel is also the darkest part of the ship, where you cannot see your hand in front of your face, where the noise from the ship's machinery is deafening, and where it gets to be easily disoriented, and you can fail. Every SEAL knows that under the keel, at that darkest moment of the mission, is a time when you need to be calm, when you must be calm, when you must be composed, when all your tactical skills, your physical power, and your inner strength must be brought to bear. If you want to change the world, you must be your very best in the darkest moments. The 9th week of training is referred to as Hell Week. It is 6 days of no sleep, constant physical and mental harassment, and one special day at the Mud Flats. The Mud Flats are an area between San Diego and Tijuana where the water runs off and creates the Tijuana Sloughs, a swampy patch of terrain where the mud will engulf you. It is on Wednesday of Hell Week that you paddle down to the Mud Flats and spend the next 15 hours trying to survive this freezing cold, the howling wind, and the incessant pressure to quit from the instructors. As the sun began to set that Wednesday evening, my training class, having committed some egregious infraction of the rules, was ordered into the mud. The mud consumed each man till there was nothing visible but our heads. The instructors told us we could leave the mud if only 5 men would quit. Only 5 men, just 5 men, and we could get out of the oppressive cold. Looking around the mud flat, it was apparent that some students were about to give up. It was still over 8 hours till the sun came up. 8 more hours of bone-chilling cold. The chattering teeth and the shivering moans of the trainees were so loud, it was hard to hear anything. And then one voice began to echo through the night. One voice raised in song. The song was terribly out of tune, but sung with great enthusiasm. One voice became two, and two became three, and before long, everyone in the class was singing. The instructors threatened us with more time in the mud if we kept up the singing, but the singing persisted. And somehow the mud seemed a little warmer, and the wind a little tamer, and the dawn not so far away. If I have learned anything in my time traveling the world, it is the power of hope. The power of one person, a Washington, a Lincoln, King, Mandela, and even a young girl from Pakistan, Malala. One person can change the world by giving people hope. So if you want to change the world, start singing when you're up to your neck in mud. Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell. A brass bell that hangs in the center of the compound for all the students to see. All you have to do to quit is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to be in the freezing cold swims. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. All you have to do is ring the bell to get out. If you want to change the world, don't ever ring the bell. It will not be easy. Start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and that you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never, ever give up. If you do these things, the next generation.
This is so important, and I love how he broke this down. Start the day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. You may not like them. You may hate their guts, but respect them. Show them respect. Have some boundaries. Life is not always fair. Move forward. Don't be afraid to fail. We don't learn unless we make mistakes. Take risks. What's the worst that's going to happen? Step up. I don't mean at the casino. Step up when times are toughest. Face down the bullies. Don't let these people mess with you. You don't have to be an asshole about it, but don't. Lift up the downtrodden. Never give up. This gives me chills.
Ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to be in the freezing cold swims. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. All you have to do is ring the bell to get out. If you want to change the world, don't ever ring the bell. It will not be easy. Start each day with a task completed. Find someone to help you through life. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and that you will fail often. But if you take some risks, step up when the times are the toughest, face down the bullies, lift up the downtrodden, and never, ever give up. If you do these things, the next generation and the generations that follow will live in a world far better than the one we have today. And what started here will indeed have changed the world for the better. Thank you very much.
Absolutely gives me chills. I'm going to put the link up if anybody wants to come up and say hi. You can. Hello, Tamara. Tamara said, don't touch the bell, people. Nope. You can take a day off. You can take a nap. Don't give up. Don't give up. We know life is hard. So when we were talking about how we had to memorize the Declaration of Independence, the preamble, the Bill of Rights, learn the Constitution, I had to memorize this in 3rd grade. Many of you had to do it too. Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death.
No man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism, as well as abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House. But different men often see the same subject in different lights. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. I wish to know what there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the last 10 years to justify those hopes with which gentlemen have been pleased to solace themselves and the House. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petition comports with those warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our land. Are fleets and armies necessary to our work of love and reconciliation? These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. They are sent over to bind and rivet upon us those chains which the British ministry have been so long forging. And what have we to oppose them? Shall we try argument? Sir, we have been trying that for the last 10 years. If we wish to be free, we must fight. They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary. Sir, we are not weak. If we make a proper use of those means which the God of nature hath placed in our power, the millions of people armed in the holy cause of liberty and in such a country as that which we possess are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations and who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat, sir, let it come. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
Hello, RJ. Give me liberty or give me death. We want our independence. We want taxation we want to know what our taxes go to. Who is your favorite founding father, RJ? And happy Independence Day to you.
Hello, Brooks, and thank you very much. Honestly, I am a big George Washington person, as well as John Adams.
John Adams, he is something else. Let me tell you. They all are. And some people say, well, they're not the people you think they are. I'm like, dude, this was like 240 some years ago.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at the Bill of Rights, which you were talking about earlier, if my memory from 20, 30 years ago, John Adams is the inspiration behind the Bill of Rights.
Well, and Alexander Hamilton obviously had a big hand in it. And you brought up George Washington, who was an amazing general. You can't say he did not know his way around the war, if you know what I mean.
Oh, exactly.
They wanted him to be a king, and he refused. He said, there will be no kings in this country.
Exactly.
I'll consider being the president, but there will be no kings.
Right. And the idea of having a president at that time was no other nation had that. And the United States actually coined that idea that it will have a president not a king or a monarch or any other sort of representative of our country.
And that the states will take care of the states. You're going to have a governor. They're going to have their own Congress. They're going to have their own Senate. They're going to have 2 senators that answer back to the federal government. I mean, this is not something that someone can just put together today. Some of these people can't find their ass with 2 hands and a flashlight. Can you imagine the God-given foresight these men had?
Well, no. It's genius. With the way they did things, the way they worded things, it was genius. They kept it simple. They kept it plain for everybody to understand. And if there is an event or a time that additional definition or things need to be changed, it was open. It still is open. A living document is open to making those changes.
And they kept it where we can protect ourselves so the government doesn't take us over.
Yes.
Even though it didn't go so well when they did the insurrection in January, but that's
that
way.
Yeah, that was. Look, the Constitution has its own, and laws has its own ability. Not going to get into the politics of that, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do something. The Constitution itself says if the government becomes the be what they were believing government was being, call a constitutional Congress. Or I can't remember the exact phrasing, but there's the point I'm making is there's a path to keep the structure of the United States in place, secure, and the way it's supposed to be. But there's a way you can go in and rewrite the whole entire Constitution if need be.
If need be. But these documents have not been broken. We've had some other amendments put in, and we have attorneys that do nothing but study the Constitution. They're not in a strip shopping mall doing $200 divorces. All they do is interpret these documents.
Supreme Court alone, part of their responsibility is constitutional law. If the Congress or the president passes the law and they go ahead and review this law and say, no, this is not constitutionally correct, they throw it out. It's done. It's over. That law cannot stand. That's their responsibility.
To uphold the Constitution. You brought up George Washington.
Yes.
Let's take a look at this. You are reading my mind, RJ.
Most Americans today have an image of Washington's crossing the Delaware during the Revolutionary War. He's at the bow of the boat, his knee up, looking stoically forward as his men push through an ice floe to get him across a very vast river, much wider than the Delaware that I have behind me today. That is the myth of Washington's crossing. The reality is much more compelling than that. George Washington's army had been forced out of New York. Defeat after defeat during the New York campaign forced him to go into New Jersey, fall back into Pennsylvania. By the time he arrived in Pennsylvania, it's mid-December, and the British had been hot on his heels. But they decide not to cross the Delaware River. They know that winter is coming, and most European armies do not campaign during winter season. They decide to stay on the New Jersey side of the river and go into winter quarters. Their field commander, Lord Charles Cornwallis, even goes a step farther and decides he's going to go back to London and not even stay on the continent for the winter. The British Army is so certain that the Continental Army will not survive this winter that they are not going to keep actively campaigning. Washington's army had lost almost 90% of its strength since it engaged in the campaigns around New York. Enlistments are about to run out at the end of 1776 for Washington. His army is disintegrating around him. It is up to Washington to keep his army together and keep the colonial movement towards revolution and towards independence going forward. To do so, he is going to cross the Delaware and embark on a winter campaign. He has 5,000 or so men that he could cross the Delaware River with. He brings together a council of war. He talks to his generals, and they decide to cross the river at McConkey's Ferry and a number of other sites. He'll utilize John Glover and his Marbleheaders, who are essentially their amphibious wing of the Continental Army, men who had helped extract the army from New York by crossing the river. These hardy sailors are going to go down to boats along the Delaware River, pile men into them, and cross the river. A river crossing is not something to be taken lightly for an army. Men, materiel, horses, and artillery have to be ferried across. So specific boats like Durham boats, heavy-duty boats, have to be used to ferry men across the river. And let's keep in mind something. It's winter. There's ice floes on the river. So when George Washington decides to cross here on Christmas night of December 25th, 1776, when he jumps into his boat, he is not like that Lutz painting. He is not standing at the bow of his ship. He's probably sitting down, trying to keep warm. It's below freezing out here. A snow and rainstorm will come across these men as they push on towards Trenton. Not to mention, if his boat hits an ice floe out in the middle of the Delaware and he topples over as he stands there stoically and majestically at the bow of his ship, the Continental Army may lose its commander. Hypothermia might set in, or his men may never find him in the dark. This is a dangerous crossing. It's fighting the elements. It's fighting time, because as Washington's going across the Delaware River here, he is trying to get to Trenton, New Jersey as quickly as possible. He's trying to destroy a garrison of Hessian soldiers, 1,500 or so men, who hopefully have been celebrating so much Christmas that they will not expect a Continental Army attack. And that's exactly what happens. Washington crosses the river here. He converges on Trenton, and the crossing here is going to bring victory because it was done so quickly. It was done in secret that he is able to strike Trenton, surround most of the German garrison, and land a blow against the British officers. Charles Cornwallis is forced to cancel his trip to London and come back and start to deal with the fox that he calls George Washington.
And deal with the fox that he calls George Washington, because George Washington was a badass.
Oh yeah, he was. He was. Look, history books leave this out, and the only reason I know this is I did a lot. There's a book written recently about George Washington. I believe this is it's called Being George Washington or something like that. It gets a little political, but one of the points in there it makes is that when he was General Washington, that moment that they were just talking about him having to lead his troops out of New York down into New Jersey and then across the Delaware, is that the war would have ended in New York if it wasn't for a fog that was unusual to that time of year rolled into New York, and Washington and his troops were able to escape New York because the British soldiers and their boats were actually in the harbor that they were having to cross near.
And like Corey said, they exhausted the British. They exhausted them. They thought this was going to be an easy task, but they honestly didn't know that they had made friends with a lot of Indians around here. Because the Iroquois, the Mohicans, there were many Indians that fought like hell because, well, they probably had to.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Washington being able to escape not only New York, but to escape the Hessians, which were waiting for Washington and his troops in New Jersey, in Trenton. It's just unbelievable. There's so many times that the war could have ended and the United States would have never happened. Look at the story behind with Francis Scott Key writing the Star Spangled Banner.
Absolutely. My husband and I were talking about that over the weekend. Beverly said the fog was from God.
I agree because actually the story goes is that Washington knelt down in front of his troops and prayed that if you allow us to escape, to God that if you allow us to escape, we will become your nation.
One nation under God. Rexy said God really did create America. That gave me chills, Rexy. Let's look at what Francis wrote.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight over the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I mean, if that isn't chilling, I don't know what is. And you're going to hear that song a lot today, my friends. The flags, the flags everywhere need to go on every day, not just on the 4th of July.
And a lot of people forget the history just of the symbolism of that song and how it is so important. I played on my live on Sunday night, and I'm not saying anybody go watch it or anything like that. It's 11 minute and 40 second. 11 minute and 40 second video that I played at the end of the live, where it's Paul Harvey and many people forget who Paul Harvey is or was. He actually did a video on the history of the Star Spangled Banner. He broke it down, the complete history of how, why, and in general, the importance of just that song.
It's a very important song. Very. And obviously, our military is much different than it was in the 1700s, particularly 1776. You know, we talk about, George Washington and, people that were fighting to give us independence. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at what our United States Air Force looks like now. George Washington would lose his mind if he saw all this. Let me tell you what, George Washington would have had a permanent boner if he saw all of that equipment.
I was going to say, man, he would be drooling like there was no tomorrow.
Didn't even hear a gasoline at that time, but they'd be like, you can just blow stuff up from the sky?
Right.
Tanks? Ships? Woo! Imagine.
Not only that, just the advancements in the military since World War One. Because up to World War One, it was still basically the same things. The only thing that changed between like Revolutionary War and World War One is you weren't standing rank and file directly across from your enemy, muzzle loading a gun, a pew pew. Sorry.
A pew pew. Yeah, and they're manually loading.
To be in trench warfare, then the advancements since then, you don't have trench warfare anymore.
No. Now we get to another founding father who is very important to the founding of our country, and that is Alexander Hamilton. I know a lot of people watch the musical and stuff like that. There's much more to the man than the musical, though. I mean, in my opinion, he invented our banking system.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And his arguments with Thomas Jefferson are legendary. I mean, here he is. He's a statesman. He's a lawyer, had all this going for him. And then he goes and he has a duel with Aaron Burr, who was in huge political fights with.
Yeah, there was that was an interesting story of why they had to go into a duel, but he actually made a lot of advancements through the arguments that they had, that he was right, and it was better for the nation. But anyway, I'll let you go ahead and I'll mute myself now.
Oh no, you're right.
Now that there's a Broadway musical and people are falling in love with Alexander Hamilton, I think it's important for people to realize that most politicians have mixed legacies, and that certainly is true for Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton could be a difficult person. I think he's a complicated person. So clearly, he had friends and people who loved him, and he was seemingly charismatic and high energy kind of an individual.
There are two Hamiltons. There was the public Hamilton, who was guided by virtue and who only wanted to serve the public good. And then there's the private Hamilton. And the private Hamilton is somebody who has extramarital affairs, whose values might contradict the public good. But Hamilton actually argued that his private life should not impact the way people think about his public life.
One of the important things to know about Hamilton is that at a very early point, still during the Revolution, he became convinced that there needed to be a stronger national government. So he's a really early and really loud nationalist. He was called a monarchist for a long time. His response to that was, no, I'm not a monarchist, because people are getting elected into office, and if you don't like them, you can elect them out. On the other hand,
And this was brilliant. This was brilliant of our founding fathers. There's not going to be a king. There's not going to be a monarchy. The people need to speak. If you don't like who's in office, you can vote against them. You can say everyone gets their say if they get up and go to the polls.
He really was trying to give as much power as possible to the government.
Hamilton became the lightning rod for the first party system. And part of the reason he's the focus is because nobody can attack Washington. And so when the Jeffersonians and others need somebody to attack as this monarchist, as this person who's undermining the revolutionary values, they can't attack Washington. Washington is the revolution. It's Hamilton that they can focus on.
Hamilton, when he became Secretary of the Treasury, he had a really pretty daunting challenge in front of him. There was just massive amounts of debt and no national structure of finance. Now, he was the perfect guy for that job. What he was really good at was administrating.
Washington and Hamilton both realized that in order for the country to be an international player, their debt needed to be sound. And so Hamilton had the unpopular but essential idea to unite the debt as one common debt that was shared by the nation. And that, more than anything else, I think helped establish the United States.
Hamilton has sort of a mixed legacy, particularly as Secretary of the Treasury. On the one hand, he was a vital force for establishing national credit. He also was someone who was trying as hard as he could to empower the national government, not trying to necessarily create a monarchy, but he believed that the British monarchy was the finest government on the face of the earth. He was not shy about saying that. So that's an extreme guy, and he's not the only person who believes that, but he was a person who had a lot of power and was working towards that point of view. So some of the impact of that was good, and some of the impact of that was scary. His policies are so polarizing that people begin to rise up and protest against them.
Hamilton and our perception of him has changed over time. He was reviled in his own lifetime and immediately afterwards. But then as America's economy changed, and as the institutions that support this economy have changed, so too have our perceptions of Hamilton.
I think it was important to have his voice there pushing. It was really also important to have other voices pushing against him. I think we don't often think of the founding as a dialogue, as a debate, but it was. And I think that many different voices needed to be part of that debate for whatever came out of that moment to be even somewhat balanced.
And he was such a controversial figure. Many people wanted him to run for president, but of course, he did not. But he didn't want to run for president. Why do you think that Alexander Hamilton didn't run for president? Not like we can ask him.
You know, history tells us that about all his affairs and his personal life, and as well as his public life, as the video was referring to. I believe he just wanted that separation. That what he did. This is how he could contribute to the nation. He didn't want any more. But at the same time, he didn't want his personal life being an influence, a negative influence that somebody could exploit.
And he said his personal life needs to be separate from the politics. Well, as we know, that to this day doesn't happen. You know, when you're a politician, they're going to pick apart every part of your life.
Back in that day, it was, you know, many of our politicians, as you were making the point of earlier, they weren't the persons that history books originally made them out to being. You know, look at Benjamin Franklin, for instance. Many times when he was really our first ambassador, our first statesman, the beyond George Washington, to go represent our country to other nations, specifically France. But the United States needed those trips to happen. Conveniently, Benjamin Franklin needed to get away from his wife so she can cool off because she caught him.
Because she caught him.
So they would send him to France to go on a trip that they needed. And history writes its own information about that, which Benjamin Franklin was a very naughty man.
That did amazing things.
Exactly.
That did amazing things. I think that we should be able to separate people's personal lives from their professional life. Now, I mean, if they're a murderer or, they hurt children, obviously that's one thing. But, I think they get too far into it.
I agree. I agree. I think that sometimes they get so far into it that they want to try to find a reason to not like or try to discredit somebody.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our...
There was a poll the other day that said if Bill Clinton could run again, would he win? And this poll was huge, saying, yeah, Bill Clinton could win again. Have you ever seen a politician that can fall in shit and come out smelling like a rose all the time?
Yeah. Yeah. That would be he would be the definition of that for sure.
All right, time for some fireworks, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, to the exciting episode of Top 5 Spectacular Firework Displays. I'm your host, Nathan, and today, we're going to take you on a breathtaking journey across the United States to witness the most awe-inspiring 4th of July fireworks shows of 2023. So grab your popcorn, find a cozy spot, and let's get started. Kicking off our list at number 5, we have the Star-Spangled Blast in Washington, D.C. This annual event takes place on the National Mall, right in front of the iconic U.S. Capitol building. The display features a stunning combination of vibrant colors and synchronized fireworks, perfectly choreographed to patriotic music. The Star-Spangled Blast never fails to capture the hearts of both locals and tourists alike. Moving on to number 4, we head to the Boston Pops Fireworks Spectacular in Boston, Massachusetts. Held along the Charles River Esplanade, this legendary event attracts thousands of visitors every year. The celebration features a concert by the renowned Boston Pops Orchestra, culminating in a magnificent fireworks display over the river. The combination of the orchestra's enchanting melodies and the dazzling pyrotechnics creates an unforgettable experience. At number 3, we travel to the Music City July 4th, Let Freedom Sing, in Nashville, Tennessee. Known as the largest fireworks show in the South, this extravaganza is held at the beautiful Riverfront Park. The event showcases a fantastic lineup of live performances by popular artists, followed by an explosive fireworks display that illuminates the city skyline. The combination of music, lights, and the enthusiastic crowd truly makes this a memorable 4th of July experience. For our runner-up at number 2, we head to the Independence Day celebration at the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, Missouri. This event takes place at the picturesque Gateway Arch National Park, with the iconic arch acting as a magnificent backdrop. The celebration offers a wide range of activities for all ages, including live music, food vendors, and captivating fireworks. The display is choreographed to an awe-inspiring soundtrack, making it a true visual and auditory feast for all. And finally, our number 1 spot goes to the Macy's 4th of July fireworks in New York City. Known worldwide for its grandeur and scale, this event never fails to mesmerize millions of viewers. The fireworks are launched from multiple barges on the East River, creating a breathtaking spectacle that illuminates the city's iconic skyline. The choreography, scale, and sheer beauty of the Macy's 4th of July fireworks make it a true bucket list experience for fireworks enthusiasts. And there you have it, folks. The top 5 firework displays for the 4th of July in the USA for 2023. Each of these events offers a unique and unforgettable experience, showcasing the true spirit of Independence Day. Whether you're in Washington, D.C., Boston, Nashville, St. Louis, or New York City, you're sure to be dazzled by the incredible pyrotechnic shows and the festive atmosphere. So, mark your calendars, grab your loved ones, and make this 4th of July a celebration to remember.
RJ, what are you doing for the 4th of July tonight?
I'm eating hamburgers, having some macaroni salad, potato salad, and not going to fireworks. My anxiety does not allow me to go to fireworks.
Do you have any pets?
No.
Okay, because I mean, I'm worried about OJ with the fireworks tonight. I haven't heard any the last couple of nights because it's been raining, but it's not going to rain tonight.
Cats usually do better than dogs with fireworks, from my experience.
Well, OJ gets upset about thunder, but he can sleep through, 3 tornadoes. So I don't know.
I have to say something about that video you just played about the fireworks displays. I know it's not the greatest. I know it's not the biggest fireworks display, but how dare they? Excuse my way I'm phrasing this. Yes, I know it's 11:30 a.m. Sorry, my alarm's going off to make sure I'm up and I didn't go back to sleep. How dare they leave off Philadelphia?
I was going to say, because they have a huge fireworks show, and
it's not the biggest, it's not the grandest, it doesn't have the budget that New York City has. But how dare they leave off the place where this whole entire nation started? For those who don't know, I am originally from the Philadelphia metro area. You have the fireworks going off on the west side of the city at the Philadelphia Art Museum, and there's a park that is that goes from the Philadelphia Art Museum, which most people know is the steps that Rocky ran up, all the way to downtown Philadelphia, where you see Independence Hall, and that place is packed.
I imagine it's a huge show too. Some historians would disagree, and they would say that the country was founded in New York, not Philadelphia.
It was not founded in New York. New York wasn't even New York. It was a small town called New Amsterdam.
Just saying, that's what some historians will argue. That would be a very good conversation.
No, New York was a small town that became New York City, but back then it was New Amsterdam. And Philadelphia, with Independence Hall, where the Declaration was signed. How do you not say that our nation started in New York? How do you say the nation didn't start in Philadelphia?
It's an interesting conversation. I watch a lot of these debates just to hear each side. They're really interesting. I'll send you some.
Oh, great! I look forward to it. I'm saying this. That list. I love the Boston Pops personally for fireworks display, but at the same time, you have to include Philadelphia on that, especially since we're approaching 250 years.
Yeah. And I had this guy from, I'd have to ask Kat where he was from, Serbia. And he kept leaving me comments one day. I was doing a show about Madalina Kojakari. And he goes, you're whiny, and America is just a baby. You should join the Serbian Empire. And I'm like, no, thanks. I'm good.
It's like a lot of people will try to say that the United States has no culture, has no history. We have almost 250 years of culture, 250 years of history.
And we have a very rich history, but we are a very young country.
Yes. We've packed a lot of history and things that have happened that developed our culture and our history into those almost 250 years.
And we're the most warlike country. I mean, hell, we got the Mongolians beat.
Yes.
Good morning, Kiki. Just Me said 246 years of history.
There's a lot of history, a lot of things that set the tone for our country that happened in Philadelphia. There's areas of Philadelphia you cannot go a block without seeing something that was historic, like Betsy Ross's house, where the American flag was sewn by hand. You can actually go to the house she lived in and sewn the American flag. You can go to Independence Hall and see where they signed the Declaration of Independence. To me personally, and I'm bragging about this, even though Philadelphia does have a bit of a mixed history, Philadelphia is somewhere everybody should go. It takes about 2 to 3 days to go through and see the history, and that's including going all the way up to Valley Forge and seeing Valley Forge where Washington crossed the Delaware.
Oh, absolutely. The Northeast is full of American history. And you're right. Philadelphia is rich in it. Everything. I even say the Rocky statue is part of American history, but that's just how dumb I am.
Well, yeah. Well, that's a topic for a different conversation. It's a reflection on Philadelphia sports more than anything else.
But now you don't live in Pennsylvania anymore. You live in Tennessee, right?
That is correct.
Why did you move?
But I was born and raised in the Philadelphia metro area. I just personally got tired. It's the way I explain it. Why the Tri-Cities is a great area. I had gotten so tired of the hustle and bustle of a major city and how it was just so to one extreme, and it seemed like you just kept getting lost in the day and not enjoying a day, that I moved to the South. And I landed up in Tennessee because there was because I'm actually was on disability, and I got tired of being on disability, and there was opportunity for myself to work and be gainfully employed outside of disability in a work that I could excel at. So I moved to Tennessee because of that.
Perfect. And it's a beautiful state. Not that Pennsylvania isn't. Every time that we go to Pennsylvania, it rains.
That just you must be going in the fall then.
We'll have to think about when we've been there. And all the wrecks that happen on I-80 is crazy. It'll take them days to clean it up.
Up north, yes.
Woo! You don't want to be in a big rig going on I-80 up into New York.
Yeah, no. I-80 is still very mountainous terrain for if people have never traveled it. It's goes to New York City, but it also goes to the if you're familiar with Pennsylvania, and it goes through the Poconos area and that northern region of Pennsylvania.
And some of those bridges, when you go across them, I'm like, you're looking straight down.
Oh yes.
Ooh.
Old bridges.
Whoa.
Old bridges.
I get so nervous, and my husband's like, you'll be fine. And I'm like, God. That in Washington State, coming out of Portland into Vancouver, damn.
That's one area I've never been to, so I can't comment on that one.
It's gorgeous. There's just a lot of weird ass people over there. Nothing against Oregon, nothing against Washington State, but you got some weird ass people out there, man. I don't know what the hell some of them, not all of them. There's tons of great people, but you got some weirdos. All right, let's get back to celebrating.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again, just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. But I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. There's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
God bless the USA. God bless each and every one of you. You are amazing friends, great community, and I hope everybody celebrates safely, happily, and has an extraordinary day. RJ, you enjoy your hamburgers, your macaroni, your potato salad?
I will, thank you very much. But it's not hamburgers. It's actually a burger made of seafood. But yeah,
made of seafood. How did
yeah.
you do that?
So I'm actually a pescatarian. So I don't eat beef and land animals and whatnot. But it's basically like taking, those shellfish that you can buy in the grocery store. It's minced fish, basically, and seasoned. It's basically that, but you fry it up like a hamburger.
That sounds really good. Do you put cheese on it?
Yeah, I believe it or not, I do.
I have to have cheese on everything. I mean, if I poured a bowl of cereal right now, I would melt cheese over it.
A lot of fish, a lot of things people eat. Yes, actually, I do, Kelsey. A lot of different things that people eat, like chicken nuggets, you can do with catfish, and you don't miss it once you're used to it, or once you do that for a while. And just for me, it's not like I made a conscious choice of a diet. It's actually I need to eat this way. So it's not like I'm trying to be like one of those vegetarian type people that do it for political reasons, but that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, I do want to say I wish everybody have a happy 4th. Watch that video Paul Harvey did about the Star Spangled Banner. It's 11 minutes and 40 seconds approximately.
I put your link in the chat.
Oh, I appreciate that. You don't have to go watch the video that I did with it at the end of it. I'll tell you exactly where it is. It's at the end. But it's an 11-minute, 40-second video that Paul Harvey narrates, and it'll give you a different perspective and the history of why the Star Spangled Banner and give you a different perspective of 1814, why the American flag it became a celebrated and national icon.
And I absolutely adore it. I mean, it's just such iconic history. It formed our nation. It formed us. Too bad we have so many deadbeats around here that don't want to do the right thing, but we all do, and we're going to continue doing so.
Absolutely.
I'm going to send you guys off to your day. Happy Independence Day. Of course, we're not going to forget what it's about. So in closing, we're going to listen to the Declaration of Independence again.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial, from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislators and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.